Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
You are once again welcome to PENDREAM TV, the only channel that brings you the best and latest updates in politics. If you are new here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for more updates. Like and also share to other members to watch as well. You can also leave a comment after watching or send us a voice note on our WhatsApp number, which is 0277-128-777, showing on your screen as well. This is the only place to enjoy the political show. So I will not like you to miss out without subscribing to the channel. Do subscribe to the channel and you enjoy your stay here because we bring you the latest G's in politics. Thank you. Today we have for you a big powerful analyst and a big intelligent person of that matter who is deep into research, and what he says is backed by facts, and it's nobody but Pratt, which I want you to join me listening to what he have to say about the actions of the Supreme Court and the NPP as a whole. Thank you.
Comrade Pratt.
Well, I think the issues are very, very clear, you know. I mean, all those who have been pushing this idea of the private sector being the engine of growth and so on, if they are true to themselves, we know that they're talking nonsense, absolute nonsense, okay. One, you take the period between 1966 and perhaps 2001, and we had privatized more than 400 state enterprises. Yeah, more than 400 state enterprises, including hotels, including a shipping line, including an airline, and so on. More than 400 of them. Now, you look back, look around now. Only 2 of the 400 privatized state enterprises survived. Only 2. And which one survives? What used to be called Golden Tulip and Moving Peak Ambassador. All the rest collapsed in private hands. And these were companies which were doing very, very well in state hands. They collapsed in private hands. Yes, yes, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
It's not
Lancaster.
Yes, yes. So if you take 400 enterprises who were doing fairly well in state hands, and they were turned to private hands and they collapsed, it tells you the whole story. Now, that's not all. I mean, all of these people going around shouting about private enterprise being engine of growth and so on. As soon as their political parties win power, they quickly abandon the private enterprises that they themselves have set up and are managing and rush to the public sector. All of them. All of them. Why? Why don't they stay in the engine of growth and make sure that we grow? They all abandon the engine of growth and come to the public sector. So that whole thing should be abandoned as quickly as possible. Okay. Now, talking specifically about Saglami, you have this housing estate. The claim is that it has become too expensive. Okay. So from that claim, you get the impression that it has become too expensive for anybody to sell at a reasonable rate of profit and so on. That's the impression you get. So the private entrepreneur who has taken over this project, if the project is too expensive that he cannot make any returns on it as well, why is he buying it?
It doesn't make sense, yes.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why someone will invest in or try to buy.
To invest in something which is not profitable, which is useless, which is too expensive, that is useless. I mean, that private enterprise, you know, entrepreneur.
That'll be it for Christmas.
Or maybe psychiatric attention.
Yes.
Maybe psychiatric attention.
Certainly wrong with him.
So the whole thing doesn't make sense. If it's too expensive for government, it must even be more expensive for a private entrepreneur because government can rely on taxes and so on. The private entrepreneur cannot rely on taxes to bail himself out. So this whole thing doesn't make sense. This doctrinal privatization of state projects and state, you know, enterprises and so on simply doesn't make sense, and that is what has happened. Now, for me, the critical issue is not what former President Dramani Mahama is raising. The critical issue is not that at all. I mean, who owns the land and so on. Actually, land ownership, where does it come from? When you hear about somebody owning the land and so on, what does it mean? It simply means that their ancestors were bullies, they were warlike, their ancestors were thieves and buccaneers. That's all it means. We all came and met this land there. There's no ownership. How do we own land? They own land through conquest. Ally? Through conquest. Through bullying other people, through killing other people and so on. Occupation. That's how they come to own land. So for me, the issue is not who owns the land. That's not the issue at all. Indeed, under the laws of Ghana, the state has the power to acquire any land, you understand, in the interest of the public. That may include acquiring land for private use. You understand? So for me, the issue is not about land. The issue is that a project in which the state has invested monumentally has now been turned over to a private person under circumstances which do not make any sense at all. That's all.
Right, thank you so much, Comrade Chrissy Pratt. And these have been the thoughts of my panelists on the issue of the Saglemi housing project. Now, moving on to, I wish my producers can bring me the tablet so that I can read the messages coming through from our viewers. But while we wait for that, let's just kickstart with our next topic for discussion, which has to do with an assertion by Tony Ado. He's saying that Supreme Court mustn't be a hatchet agent. The Supreme Court mustn't be a hatchet agent. Honorable, I'm aware that you are a legal person, I mean a lawyer at that, and when it comes to judicial structure in our current dispensation, what do you make of the judiciary and how they handle issues in present times? It's coming through on our Facebook page. This one says, "Good morning, dear Ohima. I'm watching from Tamale. Okay, I want to use this opportunity to say a bigger thank you to you and your team for always being there for Ghanaians and viewers all over the globe. We are sincerely grateful, and we say keep the good work. Pan-African Television, Justice, Bless, Seda." All right, thank you very much, Seidu John Paul. This one is also coming from Mahamadou Fusheni. He says, "Good morning. Supreme Court's swift decision on Honorable Afenyo Markin's petition has ignited controversy. If the Speaker reconvenes Parliament and the NDC stages a walkout, it remains unclear whether the NPP will have sufficient members to form a quorum. It seems that the NPP hasn't learned from the past experiences, and their approach won't resolve the issues at hand. They need to be told straightforwardly. I urge the Supreme Court to deliver a landmark ruling that transcends this generation, standing the test of time, rather than a politically motivated decision that could have far-reaching consequences for all." This one also says, coming from Ken William, he says, "Good morning, Ohima. Speaker must not allow the Unanimous FC to distract him by unlawful and capricious orders to stop him from doing his duties. God bless our homeland Ghana and make our nation great and strong beyond the arrogance and power of these political King Kongs of our time." Good morning, dear panelists. When this president started appointing favorites and party persons on to the Supreme Court, people criticized him, yet others saw nothing wrong with it. When a thief steals your item and asks you to go to court, you must know that his brother or sister is the judge. That's what we are seeing currently in Ghana's parliament. Okay, thank you for that message. This one also says, good morning, Ohema. By the actions of the NPP, assuming the majority leader had decided to go independent, will the NPP as a party have agreed to continue to have him as their party member and as the majority leader? Question mark. Clearly, the Supreme Court NPP, the Supreme Court is the NPP court. And from Salifu Tamale, a few more. And okay, good morning, panelists. In fact, I expect the NPP to accord Ghanaians with a modicum of respect by being principled for once. Were the NPP not the people who invoke the same law against their own former MP? So what has changed in this same law? I believe gods of Ghana are exposing the wickedness and ineptitude of the NPP. I can. He says, I can. Uncle Kwesi Pratt. Okay, Uncle Kwesi Pratt kept saying that the NDC members should not accept anything minority tag. I'm not too sure. If you could construct your submission well, I'll do all to read it for you. All right, James Mano. James Mano is saying that I think the NDC in Parliament should tell the government of Ghana to lay all bills they are bringing to Parliament for approvals to the Supreme Court to debate on, and for them, the government as seriously, the tenses are not tensing, so please do all to make all those corrections before you send. All right. Okay, Bless is watching live from wherever he is. He's saying that good to see Comrade Pratt back on the show. He's sorely missed. Okay, Comrade Pratt is here and everybody's happy to see him. This one says, hi, I'm really educated by Leonard Lawyer. Thank you so much, Pan-African Television. Okay, good morning, Madam Host. In fact, to get this country out of this constitutional crisis, we must pay attention to the Constitution Review Committee report as a matter of urgency. Otherwise, this political judgment will continue to live with us. The unanimous decisions of the Supreme Court or the Chief Justice and others also beat my imagination. How can they always think alike without varied views? Even twins don't do same. Okay. IDN from Tamale. Let me take this last one.
Thinking alike is not a problem if it makes common sense.
Right.
The three of us here have been thinking alike on a number of issues.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it's one too many. That's what he's trying to say. Yes, it's one too many. This one says, good morning, Ohema. Please greet my uncle, Lawyer Inusa Fuseni, and your noble panelists. The Supreme Court isn't the only institution that understands English or are the owners of the Constitution. The Constitution was not written by judges but citizens. So let's not any judge think the Constitution is their property to do whatever they want. Are they even considering the educational crisis? It says this is unlawful. Unlawful ruling can bring our school and law schools. Okay. Thank you very much for bringing in your messages. I'll take more messages once we are signing out, but let me come to Comrade Kwesi Pratt on his view on this subject matter.
Well, first of all, let me say that I've had the privilege of reading Dr. E.G.A. Don Arthur's book, Ghana's Historical Journey to Self-Government and Independence, Volume 1. In fact, the quality of the book itself it's extraordinary. I mean, this is a hardcover, you understand? And it is 500 pages, in fact more than 500 pages. Now when I read the book, I came to the conclusion that this is one of the best historical records for all time. I mean, this book can be easily compared to Basil Davis's Black Star of Africa and so on. You know, it's in a class of its own. It's a fantastic book. It's a really fantastic history book. Unfortunately, Dr. Don Atta, I'm told, sent only 50 copies of the book to Pan-African Television, for sale. And for those who are interested in our history and the controversies around our history, who is founder, who is not founder, and so on, I would recommend very strongly that they read this book. There's an aspect of the book which I found extremely interesting. It has to do with Lord Lugard, who is credited with being the initiator of indirect rule. That's what we were taught in school. It turns out that the record shows that he is not the initiator of indirect rule. And that the actual initiator of indirect rule was his girlfriend. His girlfriend initiated indirect rule and so on. And later was attributed to him. And the book also explains our current condition. Because Lord Lugard wrote a lot, and in one of his writings, he had told the British that they shouldn't think that we'll be happy with British rule forever, and that at one stage we're going to revolt. And that if we revolted and got independence, they needed to do some things in order to keep us enslaved. What we are experiencing today shows that they listened to Lord Lugard and so on. So this is a book that I will very, very highly recommend. One of the best records of our history. And I agree fully with Ohima that we should all try and get copies. It's a fat book, more than 500 pages, hard copy and so on, fat book, and obviously a little expensive, but it's worth having this book in your library. Now, with regards to what is happening in the Supreme Court, I've heard many comments. And one of the comments I've heard is from a former Chief Justice. I think that the views of a former Chief Justice must carry some weight. And this former Chief Justice, Her Lordship Sophia Akufu, her comment is simply that our Supreme Court is becoming too predictable. That's not a very positive comment. That we have a Supreme Court which is too predictable. What makes it predictable? Is it the composition of the court? Is it the ideological inclination of the judges? What is it that makes it possible for us to predict, what will come up as Supreme Court rulings and injunctions and so on? What is it? And this is a comment which is made by a former Chief Justice. I don't think that you can ignore this comment. Now, yesterday, I also listened to a former judge of the Supreme Court, Justice Atuguba, and he could not fathom how the Supreme Court even came to determine this matter and to give a ruling. And he was saying that if you look at Article 99 of the Constitution, it is clear that even if the majority then and minority now, whatever you think, at Fenner marking and so on, felt the need to go to court, they should have gone to the High Court and not the Supreme Court. You understand? So Justice Atuguba was very, very clear, Now, I've also heard Mr. Chachuchikata, and nobody can deny, the place of Mr. Chikata in law in Ghana. And his comments were most interesting. He's saying that the crisis in the national economy is nothing compared to the crisis in the judiciary. Wow! This national economy has completely collapsed. This country is bankrupt. So if you have a lawyer of the stature of Mr. Chachuchikata come to the conclusion that the crisis in the national economy is nothing compared to the crisis in the judiciary, then we have a really big problem to deal with. Now, beyond lawyers and judges and so on, other comments have been made. And for me, one of the most critical comments is a comment which was made by one of my very good friends, Mr. Albert Kandapa, on the conduct of the Supreme Court. And he's saying that, look, if every time all cases that come before you, there's a unanimous decision in favor of the government, it does raise questions. And in this particular case, it raises many questions. The fact that the court was composed in 12 hours, and it's not easy to compose a court in 12 hours. First of all, if the judges don't know that something is coming before them, the judges are human beings, they have all kinds of commitments, their children may be sick, they may have funerals to attend. The judges are human beings like us, they have all kinds of commitments. To assemble them in 12 hours is not a small task, it's a difficult task. Even here in Pan-African television, we cannot assemble journalists, all our journalists in 12 hours because they have all kinds of commitments and so on. Superior Court judges must have, you know, more responsibility, they must have more commitments and so on than ordinary reporters and so on. And yet, we managed to assemble them in 12 hours with alacrity. Something must have been done so efficiently or over-efficiently.
The special
you understand? So, that itself raises issues. Now, I'm wondering whether the Supreme Court addressed itself to Article 99 of the Constitution. And if it didn't, then I'm going to raise the question, why? You know, because for judges of the Supreme Court to make decisions, to come up with rulings, they need to look at all the different sides of the issues. And you cannot, stricto sensu, interpret Article 97 of the Constitution without reference to Article 99 of the Constitution. They are interrelated. Master, you are the lawyer. They are interrelated. So I'm surprised that this happened. Okay. Then there's also the issue of the inconsistencies of the Supreme Court. In one breath, the Supreme Court can make a ruling and say that, look, we are making this ruling because people should never be left unrepresented. You understand? And then in another breath, they make a ruling which says that people can be left unrepresented. There's a certain level of inconsistency which I think is troubling and perhaps may have influenced the comments that we are hearing from eminent lawyers and eminent jurists and so on. Now, we are told today that government business is likely to suffer. Okay, there's some $250 million loan that government is seeking and some tax waivers and so on. But, my friend, why was parliamentary sittings suspended indefinitely? Because NPP members of parliament decided not to go to parliament to go and do the government business for which they are crying today. So whose fault? It is the NPP members of parliament who decided that government business was not important and therefore they were going to boycott the sittings of parliament and made it impossible for parliament to be clothed with powers to make decisions. So it's their own business, you understand? Now we are told that if you look at the standing orders of parliament, 15% of membership can trigger a recall of parliament. It is not automatic. It is not automatic, okay? So we have to be careful. It's not automatic. Now, we are told also that even if they can trigger a recall of parliament, there are two options. Parliament can be recalled in a minimum of 7 days if there is an emergency. Without an emergency, it takes a minimum of 14 days. Now, what have they said which suggests that there's an emergency? I haven't seen anything which suggests that there's an emergency and so on. In any. Then there's a certain interpretation of the Supreme Court decision which suggests that the Supreme Court ruled against the Speaker. It is not true. All that the Supreme Court did was that, look, this matter has come to us for interpretation. Article 97 GH has come to us for interpretation. We are not able to do the interpretation now. And until such time that we are able to do the interpretation, the Speaker's action must be stayed. That's all the Supreme Court said. So the Supreme Court has not decided that the NPP has a majority in parliament and the NDC has a minority in parliament. So those decisions have not been made by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is yet to determine that. You understand? So sometimes the reckless jubilation I see around, in the newspapers and so I'm beginning to wonder what's the basis of these, reckless, jubilations and so on. There are other things that have come up as a result of this issue and so on. When was that? Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. I tuned in television and saw busloads of NPP supporters in Parliament House. Who sent them there? What were they supposed to do? Were they sent there to take part in the parliamentary debate? Were they sent them to intimidate members of parliament? Why did anybody send busloads of NPP supporters to Parliament House? In any case, that is a flagrant abuse of the public order law. Not abuse, I mean flagrant disregard of the public order law. If the ruling party, if the government will bus hundreds of people to assemble in Parliament House without reference to the public order law, they render the public order law completely useless. Yeah. So what if tomorrow NDC also decides to mass its members in any part of the country? Would you be able to draw the attention to the provisions of the public order law and so on? Look, this recklessness should stop. This childishness should stop. And I listened to my nephew, Afenyo Makin, speak eloquently about how the people of Ghana are suffering and they cannot afford 3 square meals a day and why we should not do anything also to wreck the peace. At least for once he has admitted that people cannot afford 3 square meals a day. You understand? But then, what is it that we are doing in order to ensure that we do not wreck the relative peace that we appear to be enjoying, even in the face of all the difficulties that our people have? You understand? In any case, this attempt to force the speaker to recall Parliament, just in case he succeeds, the speaker's decision that the NDC now constitutes the majority and the NPP constitutes the minority has not changed. Okay. Will the NPP group in Parliament accept its minority status? And if they will not accept its minority status, what will they do when the speaker recalls Parliament? They will go and fight with the NDC over the majority seats. Is that what they're going to do? Now, if they are not going to do that, are they going to sit on the minority side, which will be an acceptance of the speaker's ruling and so on? What is all this confusion? What's all this confusion? So, well, Dr. Tony Edu speaks his mind. He has always spoken his mind. He's one of my friends that I respect a lot, because even sometimes, at some risk and so on, he speaks his mind. He's always spoken his mind, and he has spoken his mind again. Whatever it is important for a Supreme Court or the entire judiciary to demonstrate impartiality. It's crucial. You understand? So that when a decision is made by the Supreme Court or is made by any other judicial organ, even if we disagree with it, we'll be comfortable that it came out of principle as is understood by those who constitute the courts. And the final point I'd like to make is this one. You see, when the Supreme Court sits, it sits in our collective name. Okay? When the Supreme Court sits, it sits in the name of people who have never been to school before. People who are not lawyers. It sits in the name of carpenters and so on. It sits in my name and it sits in your name. And that is why, lawyers, lawmakers, and so on, over the years, have come.
Thank you for staying tuned. PENDREAM TV really appreciate your time. Please, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please, I'll urge you to do so, because that's the best way to stay glued to the channel and for not missing what is happening on the channel. Do share to other members as well. All your contact list that are on WhatsApp, please do share with them. Thank you.
PENDREAM TV now, so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.